Magic is impossible. Alchemy, genjutsu, divination, necromancy. None of these exist now, and no matter what efforts any number of human beings make, they never will. Which is kinda the point. Magic is a trademark of the fantasy genre. The genre that appeals to the desire to see a world completely unlike ours. As much as I love Earth, we've all gotta admit sometimes this is not a great place to be, and that's where fantasy stories come in. They provide an escape, present situations so full of creativity and far removed from reality that for a moment, you forget the trials of the real world. You believe that anything is possible. Or at least, that's how it's supposed to go. Modern fantasy stories have a problem. Magic has become too common, accepted, expected. We don't look at magic as something that violates the laws of our world. We look at it as something that constitutes the laws of the fictional world. What does this mean? Well, that fantasy doesn't end up feeling fantastical. Magic doesn't end up feeling magical. Before we go any further, let's make sure we're all on the same page by clearly defining what I mean by magic as a power and magical as a feeling. The ancient origins of the word mage came from a word that meant to be able, that is, to possess the ability to carry out supernatural feats. A definition I like by a notable individual says that magic is the science and art of causing change to occur in conformity with will. I will adapt that for the purposes of our discussion to call magic any set of learnable practices one can employ to produce supernatural phenomena. Now, when I say magic doesn't feel magical, you probably have some idea of what I mean because you clicked on this video, but I mean that it doesn't inspire childlike awe and excitement like it's supposed to. Magic is the power to manifest miracles, but in modern literature, it just feels mundane. And we can thank magic systems for that. You've heard this a million times, but it keeps being said because it's true. Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic, and conversely, any sufficiently analyzed magic is indistinguishable from science. For the sake of upholding coherent and consistent narratives, writers attach rules to their magic. This allows them to communicate to their audience what is within the character's power and what isn't for the sake of establishing tension. Why can't they just magic away the disease? Because they need to find the right ingredients for that spell. Why can't they just magic away the bad guy? Because the bad guy also has magic. What decides whose magic is stronger? This list of rules that will make the plot flow the most seamlessly and unobjectionably. Magic systems make the world more believable. They make magic make sense. And that's the problem. Magic shouldn't be governed by a system. Magic exists to break systems. It should be free and beyond understanding. Magic stops being magical the moment you believe it can be broken down and studied, the moment you search for explanations. What makes magic magical is accepting that it can freely violate any of your understandings of the world, acknowledging that it is impossible, but it happened. It is impossible, but it will happen. Well-written magic will make you feel the same as a child who just witnessed a magician defy nature to make a woman levitate. I decided to make this video because I recently stumbled upon a story which made me feel just that. Woven by Lark and Wren. Once upon a time, dragons roamed the land. They possessed mighty power and intellect, but above all, what made them truly great was that they could perceive the threads that made up reality, and they could manipulate them to perform feats of magic. Once upon a time, there were humans. Humans who coveted that power. They entered into partnerships with the dragons. The dragons lent their sight that they could see the threads and their claws that they could weave them, that they could become magi. As I said, this was a partnership. The dragons had not in mind charity, but an exchange. For bestowing upon the humans magic, the humans gave them treasures, subjects, kingdoms. The magi gained power, and the dragons gained control. Once upon a time, this went wrong. Unable to satisfy their greed, both sides waged war. Dragons were hunted for their bodies and in turn conquered the human lands. Unable to tolerate each other any longer, the races battled and blood was spilled until the dragons retreated. Never again were they seen, and without their ability to gaze upon the threads, never again did the humans practice magic. First of all, perfect score for style and aesthetic. I don't usually comment on art as someone whose drawing looks like this, but the art style suits the plot so well. The painted aesthetic with very few hard lines was a brilliant choice for a story that's built on reality being malleable and all things blending into each other. The story of Woven begins only 14 years after the battle between the humans and the dragons ended. Magic disappeared from daily life, and people have already begun to forget what living in the previous era was like. For most people, magic is just a distant memory. Ayşe isn't most people. She can see the threads. Now, this sounds like the setup for her to be a shonen protagonist where she rises to dominate the lands and become the greatest mage, but she has a debuff that hurts her more than seeing some threads could ever help. She's blind. From the descriptions she's heard in fairy tales, Ayşe believes she can see the threads, but considering she can't see anything else, she isn't super confident she's right, and no one else is at all confident she's telling the truth. Even in the era of magi, threads weren't visible except through the eyes of dragons, so this fabric of reality laying itself bare before this young girl doesn't make sense. And that's what we're looking for. I want you to go on to read Woven after this, so I'm going to skip over the plot beats and focus on what makes the magic so good. First, the magic system is an interaction with nature. Unlike most magic systems where a mage gathers and commands mana to shape it into their desired form, in Woven, magi don't have any well of energy to draw from. Magic is just what you call the act of interacting with the threads of reality. Why is this a good thing? Because power scaling never gets involved. The strength of your magic isn't a matter of having meditated for 100 years or having consumed the blood of a dragon. It's all about how you can think to arrange the threads of the world around you. Those threads don't wish to be woven. They have a gravity that returns them to their natural state. They resist and fight against change. Magic is the act of violating that system, using the threads against each other, coercing nature to conform to the vision you have for it. Magic breaks the system. The second part of what makes this so good is completely sociological. Even before magic was a lost art, people only understood magic so far. Different characters having different views and interpretations of magic that all count as rational serves to make it more esoteric and mysterious. To completely understand it would be to completely understand creation, which simply isn't possible. While magecraft was studied and universal knowledges were gathered, Ayşe is blind and her world doesn't have braille. She can't read any of that to study in a traditional sense, but due to the boundless nature of magic, even without memorizing blueprints or replicating best practices, she can find ways to communicate with the world through her creativity and whatever understandings she gained from observing the threads around her. I'm sad that I don't feel like I've done this service, because guess who's behind on all his schedules as usual? But I hope you'll find out that it's even better than I've made it sound by giving it a read over on Webtoon.